It is 4:01 p.m. On Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. I will call to order this meeting of the Thompson Springs Special Service Fire District Administrative Control Board regular meeting. Those present are all 7 members of the Grant County Commission, Road Supervisor Bill Jackson, and Commission Administrator Mallory Nassau, Clerk Auditor Quinn Hall, Strategic Development Director Chris Baird, and that's all I will introduce at the moment. Moving on to the agenda here, we'll first have a citizens to be heard section. If there are any citizens to be heard for the Thompson Springs Special Service Fire District Board, please raise your hand or speak now. Okay. Seeing none there, we'll move to nominations. We'll move on to action items, and it's nomination and appointments of board chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer. I would entertain a motion to make such nominations.
David, could you remind us who the current treasurer and vice chair, et cetera, are? Do you know?
I'm the current. And aren't you the vice chair, or are you the secretary, Evan?
I believe I'm the secretary.
And I don't remember having a treasurer. The secretary, well, the treasurer, it's signing the minutes is your main duty.
Yeah.
Gabe, this is Tara.
Hi, Tara.
Right now
Yeah,
for Thompson Springs, we have Mary chair, Gabe is treasurer, and Evan is secretary.
And no one currently as vice chair?
No, we've never had that, or as long as I've been here.
Okay, thank you.
I make a motion that the elected officials for the Thompson Springs Special Fire District remain the same.
I wonder if there's some, if it makes sense to have the chair of the fire district be the same as the chair of the commission for the sake of running meetings.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, running the meetings, that makes sense. I withdraw that motion. So I make a motion for Gabriel Wojtek to be the chair of the Thompson Springs Fire District.
I'd second that.
All right, we had a motion by Mary and a second by Evan Clapper let's see, that was a motion to appoint Gabriel Wojtek as chair of the Thompson Springs Special Service Fire District. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Passes unanimously. I would entertain a motion to appoint a secretary and treasurer. Maybe we can do that in one fell swoop.
I can make that motion. I'd move to appoint Evan Clapper as secretary and Mary McGann as treasurer of the Thompson Springs Special Service Fire District.
Motion by Commissioner Stock. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Clapper. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Vote passes unanimously. Thank you all. We'll move on to approval of minutes. The minutes for December 21st, 2021 for the Thompson Springs Fire District Board regular meeting.
I make a motion to, go ahead.
I'd move to approve the minutes for, oh, sorry, what was the date?
December 21st, 2021.
Motion to approve the minutes for December 21st.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Motion to approve by Commissioner Stock, second by Commissioner Walker. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye, or both.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to ratification of payment of bills, Grand County bills to be approved for the Thompson Springs Fire District for January 18, 2022. Total bills in the amount of $1,907.74. Total payroll in the amount of $535.45. Total bills and payroll combined in the amount of $2,443.19. Do I have a motion to approve the bills as stated by the chair?
I move to approve the bills as stated by the chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, I got a motion by Mary and a second by Jacques. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Passes unanimously. And we'll move on to the fire chief's report. Chief Markham, are you in the building?
I am, kind of.
Welcome. Thanks so much for being here. Please offer us your report.
Okay, thank you. I'll get right into recent incidents. The end of December, December 28th, I actually jumped on a Grand County EMS ambulance and headed to the Greyhound bus rollover way up past the San Rafael swell. We did get canceled en route to that, but there was, I think, 40 some people on board that. So that was kind of a bad deal. On 12/30, myself and one of my new members responded to Green River on a structure fire for an agency assist, and we did help out with that for a couple of hours. January 4th, we had a ground fall here at one of the local businesses with a pretty serious injury. On the 14th, I did respond to an illegal burn. There were some complaints in town, and a gentleman was burning illegally here in town, so shut that down. As far as equipment goes, no issues with the trucks and stuff. I was lucky, or we were lucky, to receive some surplus equipment from another department. So a bunch of ropes, really good ropes, some decon equipment, decontamination equipment for any kind of hazmat incidents, and also what we call a pumpkin. It's a 3,000 gallon water tank that's really helpful when helicopters have to dip. And we actually used a couple last year. We had the fires up here in the Book Cliff, so really fortunate to get those. Training is ongoing as usual. On the 6th and 7th of January, I did a CPR first aid training for our 2 new members. So they're all trained up with that. I am sending 1 new member to the Winter Fire School this weekend in St. George. It's 2 days of really good training. I did get the Utah State Fire Marshal's license plate grant for $5,000 proposal in on time. Should know about that within the month. And then I'm also looking into a FEMA fire department grant, which is due in the middle of February. So I'll get that written up and sent in. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Are there any questions for the chief?
Can I just make a comment?
Please.
I'm so happy to hear that you have help out there, Chief. That's really exciting.
Yeah, no, it was great, especially with that structure fire. Have someone to actually run the engine. Yeah, I'm pretty grateful right now.
All right. Thanks as always for all you do out there. And seeing no other comments, I'll go ahead and with that, go ahead and close the Thompson Springs Special Service Fire District Board meeting. Thank you, Chief Markham.
Thank you.
Moving on here, it's 4:10, and I will open the Grand County Municipal Building Authority public hearing. And let's see, first up, call that to order. First on the docket here, first thing we have is an approval of minutes for February 2nd, 2021. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I would move to approve the minutes of the February 2nd, 2021 meeting.
Second,
Thank you. All right, a motion to approve by Commissioner Hadler, second by Commissioner McGann. Call for a vote. All those voting in favor, raise your hand or say aye or both. Passes unanimously. Thank you. And then we'll jump right ahead to action items. We have a similar item as we had in the last meeting here, electing president, vice president, and secretary. As stated on the agenda, currently Commissioner McGann is president, Commissioner Wojtek is vice president, and Commissioner Clapper are secretary. So who can have a shot at making a motion, shuffling those around as needed?
I'll give it a try. And I'm just presuming that the current officers don't mind continuing. If that's wrong, that we just won't vote for the motion. But I move that we appoint Gabriel Wojtek as chair, Mary McGann as vice chair, and Evan Clapper as secretary of the Municipal Building Authority.
Do I have a second? All right, motion by Commissioner Walker, second by Commissioner Stock. All those voting in favor say aye or raise your hand. Vote passes unanimously. All right, we'll move on to the public hearing section here on our agenda. And this is the public hearing to receive public comment regarding the Jackson Street Storm Drain Phase 2 CIB application. And I'll invite Bill Jackson and Chris Baird to present on this topic for us.
Thank you, Gabe. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
All right, I'm going to cover the financial side, and then I can switch over to Bill Jackson to cover the project, the scope of work. So the total estimated project cost, and just to start off, this is phase 2 of the Jackson Street Stormwater Mitigation Project. The first phase was a detention basin, which is complete. The second phase is the conveyance system under the highway into Pack Creek. So total project cost is $2,711,943 estimated. That's up considerably from the first time we did it. I don't know if Bill remembers how much it was before, but I think this is over $1 million increase to the price tag from the last time that we were looking at doing this particular phase of this project. So what I'm proposing is to request $1,356,000 from the CIB in the form of a grant. And then the other 50% of the project will be covered, $265,000 from the Transportation Special Service District, and then $1,090,943 from the Grand County Stormwater Mitigation Fund. That totaling the total project cost again to about $2.7 million. It's unlikely we'd probably get a grant for that amount if we get a grant at all. And so it's possible we could be looking at a loan. Part of the process, part of the reason for these public hearings is to inform the public if there's going to be any additional costs, either in the form of property tax increase or any type of user fee increase. And the answer to those questions for this project is no. Even if we do have to bond for it, it wouldn't require a property tax increase, nor any user fees. And so it's oftentimes the case that if we do get offered a loan, it'll be around 2.5%, between 20 and 30-year term. We are going to go for a grant. Like I say, it's unlikely, I think, that we would get a grant for that amount. And so we'll see what we come up with and then consider it after that. But at this point in time, I don't believe that it would require any property tax increase or user fees associated with this project. With that, I'll turn it over to Bill Jackson and let him give a little summary on the need for this project and the scope of work for phase 2.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Good afternoon. Hey, yeah, Chris is right. the cost of this project, this phase 2 of the project has went up substantially. Reasons for that are material costs and labor costs and those kind of things that are hitting everywhere in the construction business. So this project is going to consist of approximately, if I remember right, about 2,470 feet of culvert, of 60-inch culvert. Essentially, it starts from the top of Jackson Street there at the Basin, the emergency spillway area, and it'll be down Jackson Street, boring underneath 191, and then down to Pat Creek, down along 4th East there. And the benefit of this is obviously, you know, we have the detention basin built in phase 1, and this is going to catch the water coming out of the basin, which is designed to run water. But again, if that basin fills up, which it could, it has emergency spillway, and this culvert size will carry that emergency water. It'll carry a 100-year storm down to Pat Creek. But we also have the ability, and we'd have to plan another project, but we can run some water off of Jefferson Street there and tie into that storm drain and in various places. And the city could also utilize it for some of their storm drain if need be. Any more development that happens in that area could tie into that storm drain as well. So it's kind of a win-win. It eliminates, you know, even if we didn't have the conveyance system, I think we would still get debris out on the Jackson Street as well as 191 and those areas. So it'll eliminate that, and of course it'll eliminate any more danger to the residents and businesses below the detention basin as well. So this is phase 2. Any questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Bill, I was wondering, this summer, was that part of town hit pretty hard in the flooding? And if so, did the detention basin overflow? How did it function this year?
Yeah, and surprisingly, since that's been built, it was finished up in March of 2019, and very little water has been in that detention basin.
Interesting. So it just missed it this year.
Yeah, those big rainstorms that hit the city really hard didn't hit that area, so it hasn't been tested yet.
Yep, did not hit it. But we've seen some pretty good mud debris run coming out of that, you know, off the talus slopes there and down Jackson Street and on the highway and whatnot, and actually down into the business down at I can't think of that. Rim Village or Rim Market or Village Market. I'm sorry. Yeah, Village Market area, Dogwood from that area, from Jackson Street.
And maybe either Bill or Chris, could you remind me of some of the history? I take it there was some kind of study of drainage needs throughout the county, and this was near the top of the list a few years ago. Is that correct? Or?
That is correct. It is on the A priority, among others, of the stormwater in the stormwater management plan, master plan, which is the 2011 plan. And yeah, it is a priority among others, but essentially how, you know, when we did the phase 1, we were able to pick a project that we could afford to do, and that was phase 1, and now, you know, phase 2 is to finish a project before we move on to another one.
Okay, so then the other projects of similar priority are perhaps more expensive than this one, is that?
I would say it was real similar. Yeah. Likelihood, you know, and that's yet to be seen or determined for sure, but it might be Boulder Avenue, which is, you know, near Jackson there, and it looks real similar to this. The conveyance system does. Yeah.
Thanks.
I was wondering,
Any other questions?
can UDOT be considered for partial funding of this since part of the problem is that the highway gets flooded?
Well, I'll tell you, we went that route on phase one, and because we were oftentimes cleaning up the debris off 191, we kind of kept track of that, and they appreciated that, and they gave us funding, helped us fund that phase one project. I can't remember exactly what it was. It might have been $1,800. So now they're not getting near the debris, so probably no, they don't think they need the funding. That's the best I can answer that.
Thanks, Bill. Any other questions or comments for Bill?
Well, I guess,
Okay.
I mean, I just guess want to voice a little bit of concern, but I also think that engineers have probably looked at this, but I guess I get concerned about just funneling everything into Pat Creek without like more infiltration, but the infiltration basin at the top is a great idea. I don't know, I guess I just worry about the cumulative impacts of over time funneling like everything directly into the creek and then increasing flood damage there. But I assume that you and the department are looking at that and those concerns.
Yeah, it's basically the storm drain master plan, and the detention basins are to gather that water, where we can, and the debris as well, and let the water out at a regulated rate. But truth of the matter is, no detention basins or detention basins. It's all going to either Pat Creek or Mill Creek and then to the river.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll open this public hearing at 4:23 p.m. today, Tuesday, January 18th. Are there, I guess, am I supposed to invite public comments at this opening of the public hearing? If there's anyone from the public that wishes to comment at this moment, you're welcome to do so. Okay, and if not now, this public hearing will remain open until 5 p.m. on Wednesday, January 26th, where we will receive written comments until that time. Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Chris Baird, is this timely? This application would it
Yeah,
be
we're-
appropriate? Would it be appropriate to suspend the rules and vote on it tonight?
You don't have to vote on it. It's just a public hearing requirement. And
Okay.
so, we'll make the application to the CIB, and then they'll make an offer to us. And then the commission has to take action on the offer, whether it's a loan or a loan grant or whatever. So the actual action item will be after we hear back from the CIB. So Bill and I will pull the application together and submit it in February. And then I think when will the CIB consider it, Bill?
Yeah, if we get the application in 1st of February, and then I think some of the funding meetings would follow in March, April, and May, and I think May would be the final funding meeting.
Okay. So yeah, once we find out what the CIB board is willing to offer, then we'll bring it back to the commission and decide if we want to do it or not. Unfortunately, due to the price increase, this puts it out of budget unless we finance part of it. We only have, I guess what I'm saying is we don't have enough to do the Pat Creek project and this project both without some type of financing or grant. And so hopefully we'll be able to get, some either low interest loan or a grant so that we can afford to do this project and the Pat Creek project also.
And Chris, I was off on that a month. review meetings would be like March, April, May, and then the funding meeting would be June. I just want to say that for the public.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, I'm opening this public hearing. It does appear that we have a person who entered a comment on the chat. It seems like they're having a hard time getting onto the Zoom as part of the public hearing. But your comment has been received. I'll go ahead and read it here in the, just while that comment was received live. It is someone with the name Catherine Fay. Oh, it's Catherine F. Holyoke. And their comment is that I am concerned about the drainage that really does not work. There are cement barricades for the gas line that diverts the water away from the receiving pond. I'm also concerned that the piping down Jackson Street will mess up our water lines on Jackson and Jefferson Streets. Please respond. Thank you for that comment, Catherine Holyoke. And this public hearing will remain open until Wednesday, January 26th at 5 p.m. And we welcome any additional comments up until that time. Got all the bases covered for the public hearing? Did that seem sufficient? All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any other citizens that wanted to speak? Or are we good to go?
Yeah, thanks. Happy to receive any comment right now live from any citizens that wish to speak. Give it a pregnant pause. Seeing none, please write in if you have any comments. I'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 4:28 and move on to the Grand County Commission regular meeting agenda. Call to order this meeting at 4:28. And we'll start with a citizens to be heard. Thank you all, members of the public who came to comment. Thank you for your patience. If there are any members of the public that wish to offer comment at this time, please do so. We have anyone to raise their hand or anyone ready to go? I have Sarah Melnikoff. Please state your name and please offer us a comment. And please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes, please. Thank you.
3. I set my timer for 2. Sarah Melnikoff is my name. I'll try to keep it under 2 minutes. When Moab Solutions started, we had a motto that for every challenge, there was a solution. And that's what I'm looking for now through you folks. 14 years ago, when I started working with the homeless population, of whom there were many living along the parkway, something that struck me deeply was meeting a woman named Laurie who was dead the next week from exposure. I vowed up to the sky that I would not let anyone die if I could do anything to help it. Unfortunately, we've had a couple of other deaths since then. Back then, that was 2008. By 2010, we had a fund that we would put people up in inclement weather. But then we had the idea to try to obtain the Mealich house when the food bank moved out of there. And we tried very, very hard. And we were told in no uncertain terms that that building had to be condemned, that it was not safe, that it was in horrible condition. But yet, in just like 2 days, they turned on all the utilities and put EMS in there, which is great. They needed it. But I can't help but feel that there was a reticence to help keep people alive by having some kind of warming center or shelter. Fast forward 12 years, it's 2022, EMS moved out. I contacted the county and I said, wow, this would be a great time to use the Mealich house for a warming center, because we have been actively trying to obtain the Interact Clubhouse when they move out. However, we were told the county wants that. And that would have been a perfect resource, crisis resource center, shelter, and a place where we could create an atmosphere that would encourage people to make changes to improve their lives. So now we ask again about the Mealich house, and we're told that, no, the building's going to be condemned. It's no good. We know lots of tradespeople. We would like to at least have an opening to discuss possibilities, but we've been shut down from even that. And I just wonder how many deaths are okay for you guys to assume the responsibility for. I don't want to see someone else die. I hope we can at least discuss possibilities and potential. Thank you. I went over a couple seconds.
Thank you so much for your comments, Sarah, and thank you for your efforts. Are there any other members of the public that'd like to comment today? Go ahead and raise your hand or introduce yourself. All right. Not hearing any more other members of the public that'd like to speak today at the meeting. We're going to have another citizens to be heard section at approximately 6 p.m. So you are welcome to come on and offer comment at that time as well. Okay. Moving on, next on the agenda, we have department reports. And we have a report on the county general plan and strategic plan public review. And I'll invite John Gunther, Planning and Zoning Director, to offer that report to us. Hi, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabe. And good evening, Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to present this. It's an information report, so we're not looking for a motion. Just a quick history, it won't take very long. General Plan, Transportation Master Plan open houses were held on November the 10th. I think most of the Commission participated. Stakeholder version of the general plan was forwarded to all stakeholders, those that we interviewed, and department heads and the steering committee. On November the 19th, that document continues to be tracked in the Google Documents folder. Staff have gone through and scrubbed as many comments and corrections as possible and put that into a new phase 2. What I would call the penultimate is probably not the penultimate pre-final, but it should be fairly close. There's still some more work to do there. I should just comment that we anticipate more changes. Obviously, I tried to get as many comments as I could included. There were some that need an explanation and a rationale. Also within your package is a draft of the workshop that we had on January the 10th, the Planning Commission and the County Commission. Thank you for the input there. That helped a lot. The land use section I know needs attention, and that's been flagged, obviously, both before now and will be continue to be one that's part of the dialogue. So, and then the County Commission has got a draft strategic plan out there for public review. That's going to run in parallel, hopefully, over the next 6 weeks as this goes out to the public for comment. When I say public, it's actually the open public as well as stakeholders as well. So we did get some comments that I've not included, and those will still be wrapped into the next draft. So as mentioned, the next steps, staff will proceed with the updated general plan document for public review. As noted in the updated timetable, that process will extend from today until February the 11th. That might slip a little bit. And we're hoping that we can have a face-to-face public engagement exercise, but because of the way COVID is behaving, it's likely that's going to be either a complete virtual meeting or maybe a hybrid meeting, depending on where commission chambers get over the next couple of weeks here. The land use analysis will be running in parallel with that. We're hoping that the consultant will be putting a strategic scenario planning exercise together for the steering committee next week to begin that process. And then that'll eventually go to the Planning Commission and the County Commission, and obviously to the public for discussion too. So the General Plan Steering Committee, if you recall, and maybe you don't, has been assigned and given the duties of guiding the general plan. We're anticipating that that group also will help guide the land use analysis too. So sorry to bulk up your package, but it's all virtual anyway. I'm sure nobody's printing this off, but it's about 150 to 180 pages long. There's about 30 pages of maps there that need to be integrated yet. You've got a timetable that's attached. The draft document with the Google Docs link should be attached. And then the Planning Commission, County Commission workshops, and then the steering committee terms of reference. So with that, Mr. Chairman, if there's any questions, I'd be prepared to respond.
Thank you, John. Are there any questions or comments at this time? You've very well laid out the plan of attack here for us? Anything that needs to be discussed in the meeting right now? All right, not seeing any. Thank you, Mr. Gunther.
You're welcome.
All right, and we'll move on to, we don't have any agency reports. We'll move on to approval of minutes. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented in the packet.
I'll make that motion, Gabe. I would move to approve the minutes of the January 4th regular county commission meeting, as well as the January 10th joint county commission and planning commission workshop meetings.
Do you have a second? All right. We've got a motion by Commissioner Hadler, a second by Commissioner McGann. I'll call for a vote. All those voting in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Vote passes unanimously. Ratification of payment of bills, Grand County bills to be approved for January 18th, 2022. Total bills in the amount of $1,383,442.73. Total payroll in the amount of $597,152.45. Total bills and payroll in the amount of $1,980,595.18. I would entertain a motion to approve the bills as presented.
I move to approve the bills as presented.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
All right, I got a motion by Commissioner Walker, a second by Commissioner Clapper. Call for a vote. All those voting in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Commission member disclosures. Are there any disclosures that any commissioner would like to make at this time? Seeing none, thank you. We'll go on to general commission reports and future considerations. I'll start with Commissioner Stock.
All right. Let's see. I attended the Noxious Weed Board. We sent in the annual weed survey around the state, or to the state. Attended the Community Renewable Energy Program board meeting, and that program's moving along. It's exciting. Planning Commission and the County Commission had a joint meeting, which I also attended on the general plan, like everyone else here. I have had meetings to discuss the public lands plan with the public lands subcommittee, and we discussed and reviewed recently submitted survey results and mapped out some next steps for that process. I attended a salinity studies meeting with Tom Marston of the USGS, and also there was the USGS presenting on a study that they have going on in the Matheson wetlands. And it is, I won't go into details there. I also have organized and attended a groundwater monitoring meeting for Grand County. We are submitting an application to become a data provider for the groundwater monitoring network, and basically got consensus from other agencies to do this in a cooperative fashion. And yeah, there's a lot more there too, but I don't know what to say. We're going to submit the grant on Wednesday and we'll move on from there. Okay, that's all.
Thanks, Sarah. Commissioner Hadler.
Thanks, Gabe. Like everyone else, I attended the Joint Planning Commission general plan meeting. On the 11th, I attended the trail mix meeting where we elected officers for the coming year. And I'll offer congratulations to Colin Topper, who was elected the chair, and Justin Ricks was elected the vice chair of the trail mix committee. That day I also attended an OSTA meeting where we discussed a couple of the purchases that we'll see on today's agenda. And also I wanted to note that the lobby is mostly finished with the new floor and the concessions have been redone and it looks great in there. So next time you get over to OSTA, check that out. Angie and Greg have done a great job with that. On the 13th, I attended a Motorized Trails Committee meeting where we also elected officers, of which none changed. So Cliff is still the chair there. And we also had a presentation by the economic development folks, August and Biga, and discussed sustainability messaging for the motorized contingent. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Jacques. Commissioner McGann.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll begin with saying my concerns about our rise in COVID. It's starting to affect some essential businesses and essential services. The Solid Waste Special Service District is being highly impacted. I've been working with them almost daily. If it continues and they continue to lose as many workers as they are, then the first thing they're going to do is they will temporarily suspend the single stream recycling. If they need to continue, they will suspend the cardboard. And then they will limit roll-off containers hauling service. And then they will temporarily close the recycle center on Sand Flats. And perhaps they're going to have to temporarily close Moab landfill. So it's critical, and for me, it's somewhat frustrating because the fight to keep us, I'd like to see our county have a mask mandate, just like Salt Lake County. We'd get a lot of kickback, but I'm concerned that we're going to have some essential services in our community suffer greatly if we don't look at doing something proactive. So that's my comment on that and my concern. I would like to see some action. I attended the same meeting everybody else did. It was productive and it moved the general plan forward. On the 11th, I attended a combination meeting of the Economic Diversification Advisory Council, Economic Development Advisory Board, and the Travel Council, and the economic, and it was run pretty much by August Granith. And the highlights, it was a long meeting. It was a very long meeting. And thank you, Austin helped me summarize what went on. The first thing was a presentation from the Utah Association of Counties, Sovereign Impact Center, and Kim Gardner Policy Institute, and the Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments, on how the community should be thinking about putting together projects that could be funded by private sector capital federal infrastructure dollars. If you went, that was taped, and I'm going to go back and re-listen to that presentation because it was full of so much information that it was hard to absorb. I know Gabe was at that meeting as well, and we should take advantage of some of those programs. We reviewed the status and function of each advisory board, as well as an overview of their 2021 activities, thinking about combining and making one advisory board for the economic development was discussed. And they reviewed the 2022 budget, discussed of economic development master plan, and they updated the Canyonlands Business Summit, which now they're still hoping that can be in person, but they're making plans in case it has to go virtual. On Wednesday, I attended the USU Advisory Council Board, and we made plans for the ribbon cutting, which once again, we're hoping it can be in person and not Zoom, but it is on April Fools. On April 1st, there will be a ribbon cutting, and I'm quite excited about it, and I'm hoping a lot of people will be able to come. And we also were working and helping the high school, rather than doing a career day, or doing a career week, April 4th through 7th, and we gave some help and with that. The Moab area, on the 13th, I attended the Moab Area Housing Task Force meeting. They have an employee survey they're going to be getting out, and that is going to let us know how they're housing, what are they seeing with their employees and their housing, so that it will help guide and let us know how many affordable houses we really need to be looking at. You know, what's the goal? What's the need in the future, updating that. And all affordable housing right now, you know, Cinema Courts, Maps, Virginia, they all have a waiting list. And they're working on updating and distributing the Moab Area Housing Plan and updating the Affordable Housing Plan implementation. I think they're hoping to have that done and presented to us by this middle of spring, end of spring. And that will help us determine how we, you know, how close are we? Are we getting close to, because we have a lot of housing in the pipeline. I met with, and then yesterday Kevin and I met with Willie Gray Eyes, and we're going to be able to have a joint meeting with San Juan County, Grand County, and the city of Moab on either February 8th or 22nd. He said he was going to move that forward. I didn't listen to the meeting today to see if that was put on future considerations. I'll follow up. We discussed the Book Cliff Road and why Grand County is so adamantly opposed to it. And we also discussed our concerns about San Juan County creating their own fire department in Northeast San Juan, which I've talked to TJ Brewer today about that, and it's a big concern. Because then they'll be competing for resources, they'll be taking volunteers out of the same pool. So we discussed that and gave him some options, such as if when we're redoing the district and looking at expanding it to cover all the places that aren't covered in Grand County, we could also just move it into San Juan County. And then the people would be taxed like we are for fire protection. And it would end up saving San Juan County money rather than costing them. So we talked to him a lot about that, and that's my report. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mary. Commissioner Walker.
All of the meetings I've attended recently have also been attended by one of the previous speakers who already gave a summary. So I don't have much to add to that. Thanks.
Commissioner Clapper.
Yeah, the cemetery district didn't have much business, just some signatures on some sales of some plots. This morning I met with the EMS Special Service District. It was a long but productive meeting. We elected officers of the board, and everyone is staying the same there. And then there's a lot of effort being put into creating subcommittees. There's an audit committee, a budget committee, an evaluation committee, a policy committee. And so we're going to have a much more regular scheduled structure around meeting with those subcommittees, rather than trying to get the whole board together as often. And so that's exciting to kind of focus in some of those efforts. And it'll probably mean more work, but I think it'll be more productive in reaching the goals of the board. Besides that, the building update, we're still waiting on garage doors. Crews have been moving things to the building, not necessarily moving in, but bringing materials and kind of dropping them off, and then slowly making that a home. So that's exciting that that's coming along, and we hope that we met digitally today as Mary was highlighting because of the spike, and we hope to be back in person at our next regular meeting and meeting in that new building. So hopefully we'll be able to get everyone up there to see that, and I'll spread the word and report back on how nice it is. And I believe that that is the only thing that I participated in that was not already covered.
Thanks, Evan.
Hey, Gabe, I decided, I think I did want to expand a little bit on what Sarah said about the Public Lands Subcommittee.
Please.
Yeah, so Sarah, Jacques, and I did meet. We've, as you all know, but just as a reminder, we've been taking public comment, our first round of public comments for the past couple of months on just the, the overall shape of the proposal. And we've begun, looking through all those comments, and many of them are long and thoughtful. And we were thinking the next steps, and I certainly invite input from the rest of the commissioners if you think this is a good idea, but we need to start filling in the details of what this proposal would look like. And that might, it could involve some field trips, but it might also involve a workshop with the full commission so that everybody can weigh in. And then looking, further into the future, once we have have developed some options or, tentative, more detailed proposals, there'll be another probably larger round of public input, live, email, probably every possible version. So that's what we're thinking right now. If anyone has opinions about that, and I think it's more or less the direction we've been discussing for the past few months. But if anyone not on the subcommittee has ideas about what we should be doing, please let us know. And we will be, you'll be hearing more from us over the next couple of months. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Kevin, and thanks to everyone on that committee. Commissioner Hedin, do you have any reports for us today?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So on the 10th, after the joint meeting with the Planning Commission, we had a separate meeting and we elected officers. We also talked about we had a public hearing for the possible rezone an 11-acre parcel on Spanish Valley Drive. There was quite a bit of public input on that, both supporting and in opposition of it. The developer was there to speak, and I'll speak more. I'll kind of give a synopsis of that once that comes to the table. I went to the Conservation District meeting, and Our Village, which is a little nonprofit organization, they're putting in an orchard, and the Conservation District is supporting that along with the Seventh-day Adventists. And they are having a crop school via the USU Extension on March 31st. And so that's something for the public to attend. I attended the library board, and just, as always, they are applying for a ton of grants that lead to a lot of different opportunities for our community. One thing that stood out there is they are going to be installing a sculpture in memory of Kylan and Crystal. And so that is something that we can look forward to. And I think that that's kind of it. Those library board meetings they're just really well run. She does a great job. And so I think that's it for me.
Great. Thanks, Trish. All right. I think that just leaves me. I attended the commission joint workshop last Monday, as did everyone else. I wanted to just acknowledge Emily Campbell, the chair of the Planning Commission, for her efforts in running or really facilitating that efficient discussion. Tuesday, as Mary did as well, the Grand County Economic Development Launch Day, as August was at Build It. And I wanted to also acknowledge August Granite's efforts in coordinating a meeting between 3 boards with guest speakers and experts. And wow, what an undertaking. I don't know anyone, I haven't seen anyone with the guts to try to pull that off, and he did it. So thanks, August. That was awesome. And Mary gave a pretty nice synopsis of some of the material that was covered in that, and just sort of acknowledging the trends in rural Utah and how Grand County is really well positioned as an opportunity zone for investment in the rural context. So yeah, and just as Mary mentioned, just getting projects, identifying projects is going to be a really important piece in that. Also in that, as part of that meeting, we revisited the discussion of merging the Economic Diversification Advisory Council and the Economic Development Advisory Board. And there was some discussion about that, but definitely a general consensus that that would be the best route, and sort of, you know, helping in particular, helping staff keep everything aligned and not having to report back from one board about what the other board did, and the actions of either board are so intertwined that it just kind of makes sense to sort of merge those together. And so there will be a little bit more sort of conversation about how that'll happen best and how that can happen with all the, you know, under all the statutes to be able to do that legally. So that'll probably come before us before too long. I also sat in on the Housing Task Force meeting on the 13th on Thursday. And then I went to Cedar City on Friday and had another session for the Utah Rural Leadership Academy that I'm participating in. And I thought that was a really good skill building and networking opportunity that was put on by Southern Utah University. So as I go through that experience, maybe there will be opportunities for other commissioners for the next round that I can recommend. Okay, I'll just leave it at that as far as the commissioner reports goes. And we'll move on to elected official reports. Quinn, do you have anything to report from the clerk auditor's office? Should have checked if he was there.
No, not really. I attended some training in Ogden last weekend on Thursday and Friday about the Olene Walker vote certification program to do with elections and whatnot. Other than that, it's business as usual. So I got quite a bit out of the meeting, and I think I also got the COVID out of the meeting. So double bonus.
I'm sorry to hear that. County Attorney Sloan, did you
all
have
right.
anything
It's
to
going
report?
fine.
Good. I'm very glad to hear that. Yep.
I do have
safe.
I do have a few things I want to update the public on. I want to follow up on what Mary said about wanting a mask mandate. I also would like to see a countywide mask mandate, such similar to Summit County and Salt Lake counties. Several leaders in the community, including from the school district, MRH, and the county, have reached out to Brady, our health director, who's based in Price, asking for his input on whether that is something that he would consider. Utah is leading the country, top 5 states, I think, for new COVID cases. I'm sure everyone's been watching it. He did respond today, and I'm going to actually read a couple of things from his email that I think is important for the public and are responsive to many emails that I get asking questions. One thing I want to remind the public of is, as of the special session that occurred late in 2021, the county no longer has the legal authority per statute as written to issue a mask mandate, which is an order of constraint under law by ourselves. The health director has to at least issue a joint order with us, or he has power under the statute as written to issue it on his own. So I have gotten several emails in the last week asking if the county commission is considering a mask mandate and why can't they act on their own. And that is because, as written, the Utah legislature wrote that into law to make it hard to issue these orders of constraints. So far, Brady, and as of today, he sent us an email that he is not considering a mask mandate. He doesn't find it effective as a preventative tool at this point. And I'm going to read some information as to why. I have pushed him a little bit more to ask, okay, well, what about our schools? I know I have a 3rd grader. Her teacher is out with COVID, and 11 kids, which is more than 50% of her class, were out today. I can't say those were all COVID cases, but obviously it's still sweeping through the schools. I do want to make the point that Biden just quietly dropped his at-home test that you can request. He dropped the website today somewhat quietly, and it's covidtest.gov. You can only get 4 tests per residential address for now, but Biden does hope to expand that. As I ordered my test today, it was super easy. So that's covidtest.gov. Brady also, our health director again, has got a lot of questions about home testing. And he said today in an email, he does not have any information about which home tests are best. And the health department does not have any plans to offer home tests either for sale or give away because they don't have sufficient purchasing power to even get home tests, but that it might be something. He indicated the state might be working on some home tests as well. But as of now, they're going to be for sale, and there are some for sale locally as well as the Biden home tests. Our health director said that 2 key messages that can have a public impact on COVID cases right now are number 1, to get fully vaccinated, and number 2, to stay home while sick. And I think we need to continue to get that message out. He also says, in the current environment, I don't see a mask mandate having an impact on caseload reduction. I'm not saying that masks aren't effective, but there is so little compliance with using appropriately fitting high quality masks that a mandate would not significantly impact disease transmission. He goes on to say, after a few sentences, it is important to note that the COVID that we are dealing with today is markedly different than one we were dealing with 2 to 3 months ago. Don't misunderstand me. There is a risk with the disease, as there is with anything, but it has changed. While our caseload is high, all 3 of our counties are in the lower third of caseloads in the state. And he concludes by saying, upon certain county leaders' requests for a mask mandate, he responds, for this week, I'm not planning anything. Evolving conditions mean that today's correct action might not be the same as one taken 6 months ago. I'm not justifying what he's saying, but I'm letting the public know that's what the county is dealing with. So we have been putting some pressure on our health director, who's based in Price, and he represents 3 counties. But he is not interested in this time and has his own legitimate reasons, obviously. Item number 2 I wanted to update the public on is the general session started today. We are without a lobbyist at the moment at the county, and there are a few groups helping the county and the city stay up to track on bills. League of Women Voters is extremely helpful organization. And some individuals I know contact me. I'm sure they contact certain commissioners as well. And we do have a legislative committee at the county. And then of course our Utah Association of Counties has standing weekly meetings that keeps us up to date. But I just encourage any public who has an interest in any bills to certainly let your county and city leaders know. You can email us at commission@grandcountyutah.net. You can email me at csloan@grandcountyutah.net. I'll be tracking it very closely this year as I did last year. And for the next mini meetings, we'll have a standing legislative update action item on the agenda. Last year, we voted to support or oppose or remain neutral on certain bills we were tracking. So we'll plan to do that again. And then third, I just want to provide an update on the double homicide that isn't much of an update, but I hear the community's frustration with lack of communication out of the sheriff's office on that. That a case is not my case. A case does not enter the Grand County Attorney's Office until charges are filed. So we're obviously not there. But I have been pushing the sheriff and he's receptive. He understands the community wants more information. He initially promised me an updated press release by the end of this week with not just an update on the case, but also response to several items of community concern and rumors that we know are still out there. It looks like that might get pushed back next week because we do want to issue that in coordination with the FBI. We have a meeting set up with the FBI to discuss the press release next week, but we do hope in the immediate future to get some more information out there on that case. Thanks.
Christina, is there any, I didn't get back, but somebody, I heard that you may have gotten some information back from Casey. I asked him to send me some ideas of lobbyists. I didn't get it.
He sent 2 good, what look like good options with a little bit of information. They look like they might be good fits for us. So Chris should weigh in, but I think he is taking the lead on contacting those folks.
Is that right, Chris?
Yeah, so I have those contacts. I haven't been able to get a hold of them yet. But we'll be able to do that pretty soon. Been negotiating COVID issues both privately and professionally, and so it's definitely slowed a lot of things down. But I'll get on that pretty soon, Mary.
And
Thank
the
you.
other,
Thank
the other good news is the general session will be remote again. There'll be in-person opportunities, but it was really easy to participate both as an elected official, but also a citizen in the general session. So utah.gov, you can follow the tabs to the legislative session for any public interested. And then for the county, it's also, if you haven't sat in on any committee hearings or participated, it's a pretty interesting process. So the good news is those meetings will continue remotely.
Thanks, Christina. Let's see, let's move on to Commission Administrator report. Mallory, what do you have from your office to report today?
Okay, I don't have a ton. Some of you folks stole my points, which the first I wanted to give a shout out to August for his hat trick with the meetings last week. That was awesome. Let's see, I also met with Ben and Carly from the city and just discussed some ideas for collaboration, and Mary and Gabriel set up some ongoing meetings with them just to be in touch and kind of go over projects that we are both working on and find overlap. So I think that would be really great, and we're going to dive into that next week and start talking about the CIB list and other things going forward. So I think that is all that I have, unless there's any questions.
Not seeing any questions. Chris, do you have any updates, additional updates right now?
Just been working on wrapping up a lot of the year-end financial stuff, getting the budget entered into the accounting software, that kind of stuff. Also working with Sarah on the water monitoring grant and putting together the CIB application also. So all things that you're aware of and that we're covering in our meeting. So that's all I have.
Great. Thank you all so much. We'll move on here to presentations on the agenda. First up, we have a presentation on the Local Homelessness Coordinating Committee. Thank you, Rihanna, for hanging with us for over an hour to give us your presentation. And thanks so much for being here. And I'll go ahead and let you take it away.
You bet. You guys have lots of important stuff to cover today. So I am going to share my screen and get right to it. Can you guys see this full screen, or are you seeing a calendar behind it?
We can see it.
We can see it.
Great. Okay. So Trish is our chair for the Local Homeless Council, and we adopted a logo this last year in addition to many other things. I wanted, I guess, say today is for the commission to understand a little bit more about the work that the Local Homeless Council has been doing and about homelessness in the state and in our county, so you can kind of further appreciate how this is intersecting with some of the other things that are happening in our county, in our city. This is an overview here of what homelessness looks like when it comes from the federal level right down to our county. Of course, there's HUD, and then they always appoint a collaborative applicant in the state of Utah. That's the Department of Workforce Services. So those funds that come from HUD, Workforce Services is who manages those grants and also make sure that all of the local homeless councils are cooperating within the model that they have. So across the state, they divide the funding and their operations up into 3 regions called continua of care. And there's one for the Salt Lake Valley, there's one called the Mountainland region, and then there's the rest of the state, which we're in, called the balance of state. And then within the balance of state, there are 12 or 13 different local homeless councils. They used to be called coordinating committees, but through a legislative act last year, they changed LHCC to LHC. So now we are homeless councils instead of coordinating committees. These LHCs, including ours, are the designated local oversight bodies, and we're responsible for developing a common vision and agenda for reducing homelessness, developing a spending plan that coordinates the funding supplied to the local stakeholders, and then monitoring the progress toward achieving state and local goals. I think it's important for you guys to know that anybody who's receiving those state funds, that is in coordination and approval of everybody within our LHCs. So they would not be able to give that kind of funding to us if our stakeholders said, nope, those are not the programs that our area needs. So it's, rest assured that we have the buy-in from the other stakeholders when we receive state funding. And there's, of course, lots of strings attached to that. Whoopsies. So everybody on this council is voluntary, and we set a mission in 2019 to connect services to address homelessness in our community. And we were always aware that this is in alignment with HUD's mandate to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. And we as state funded the Multicultural Center, when we received state funds, we also agreed to cooperate with the state database called the Homelessness Management Information System. So every time that we are interacting with people who are imminently homeless or literally homeless, we record that not only in our own system, but into a statewide database with the person's permission, whose information it is. And it's measuring how well we're doing at making homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. Right now, the local homeless council is concentrating on increasing the inventory of emergency, short-term, and transitional housing, as well as increasing the awareness, funding, and participation in solutions for homelessness in our county. So why is that important? Well, I think a lot of us might have a good idea, but we know we have a well-documented housing crisis, and we have an extremely low inventory of affordable housing. So when someone is homeless, rehousing them is very difficult. We have an employment shortage in every sector. We have no shelter here in Grand County or in the city of Moab or transitional housing. We are seeing, especially more recently, the trend of housing cost burden, where people are paying more than 30% of their income on housing. We are growing here in Moab, and we know that the rising social crises that are intersecting with housing stability, like substance use disorder, domestic violence, and mental health disorders, are exacerbated by homelessness. Right now, our local homeless council is 40 members strong, and it's growing. Some of the logos you see here are some of the organizations that are attending monthly to these meetings. We also have some other community members that are just invested in finding solutions for homelessness, and our council does include members that have lived experience themselves, which provides a really important insight. This is some unduplicated data that we have from the Homeless Management Information System. This is from July 10th of 2019 up until June 30th of 2021. We know that 276 separate individuals received services here in Grand County. And we are also tracking that data on a monthly average. So we're seeing an average of 55 individuals actively receiving services per month. And on average, about 52% in this data set here were literally homeless. And the state defines that as living in a place not meant for human habitation, versus at imminent risk, 48%, which imminent is defined by homelessness is likely within 30 days without some kind of intervention. Another thing that's really specific, especially to rural areas, is what they call, when we're talking about homelessness, there's chronic versus situational homelessness. Chronic homelessness is somebody who has been literally homeless for a year or more, or a year cumulatively over the last 3 years. We have a relatively low number of chronically homeless individuals living in Grand County versus people who had some kind of situation that caused their homelessness, and they haven't been living like that for a year or more. Oftentimes that might be domestic violence, their house being sold from underneath them, moving here for a job and not being able to find a place, so they're living in their car. Those are just a couple of examples of some situations that might cause homelessness. Pretty close to 50-50 on male versus female. 65 were white, 24% Native, 18% Latino, and 1% Black in this data set specifically. And then in terms of what ages we're looking at, we're seeing most of them were between 20 and 59 years old. I think, you know, a much lower percentage were over 60 or below 19 years old, which is great because those are, you know, that can be a more vulnerable age set, but we also have more resources. And also, if you're older, you have a fixed income oftentimes with Social Security, things like that. But that's kind of what that data had looked like. But I hope that some of you are going, oh, we have over 50 people who are actively receiving homelessness services every month in Moab, and that's true. That's a big number, and I hope you guys think so as well. Some of the things that the local homeless council worked together to accomplish in 2021, when it came to addressing like emergency shelter, is our local homeless council approved some homeless set-asides for the planned multi-family apartments coming available at Arroyo Crossing. So not here yet, but on the way. Also, the Multicultural Center has been meeting face-to-face with local lodging partners, because when we don't have a proper shelter, we do put people up in hotels and motels, campsites, hostels. So we've been trying to meet with those folks and make sure that we're being respectful of their business, and that we don't want to refer anybody over there that's going to make anyone feel unsafe or uncomfortable at their place of business. We also have updated a comprehensive list of the nearest shelters in Colorado, Salt Lake, and St. George. So when we do have to send somebody out of town for their own safety, we know where and who and how to send them to. And then more recently, we have started a project called Project Soul, which is safe outdoor living. And we have a stock of camping gear for folks who are living outdoors. And we're trying to do that responsibly within the county and city guidelines. So we're not encouraging people to camp where they shouldn't be. Another thing that it's been a huge effort is to concentrate on being data driven and collecting good data on homelessness. So in addition to the homeless management information system, which currently in our area, it's only the Multicultural Center that's participating in that. But what we're doing is the direct service providers that are part of the coordinated entry subcommittee, which is MVMC, CCAVN, USARA, Moab Solutions, and Four Corners Behavioral Health, where they're all contributing data each month with how many people they're interacting with as their clients that are either literally homeless or imminently homeless, as well as we have decided to track 3 specific barriers so that we can further understand what is intersecting mostly with homelessness. So when we talk about things like a warming center or a shelter or whatever solutions it might be, we need to understand what barriers that population is facing. So we've been tracking domestic violence, substance use disorder, and mental health. This slide is just kind of showing you there's been thousands and thousands of dollars that have come out of these organizations that have either paid for homelessness prevention, helping somebody with rent so they didn't become homeless, emergency shelter, housing subsidies, this 7 here, and I hope I did not miss anybody, but these are all the organizations here in Grand County that through grants or donations are addressing homelessness currently through one of those things I just listed there. And then this year, we are looking forward to initiating that Project Soul. We're going to be doing that through a voucher system where people in need can go to take a voucher to the library for the camping supplies that whoever they worked with determined is appropriate for them. We're trying to increase funding from local, regional, and statewide sources in solutions for homelessness. As a group, we want to advocate for Walnut Lane and other affordable housing projects because we know we just need more housing in general. That will help certainly address homelessness. We want to continue to collect good data so we can further understand the barriers and what this population looks like. And we want to advocate for longer advance notice for mass displacement. The last two in our community that's happening currently on 200 East, 200 North, and then the one recently on Cane Creek. It's been super difficult for organizations like the Multicultural Center, Moab Solutions, and others who are having people show up and it just nowhere to help them to rehouse to, especially on the prior one on 200 East with such a short time period. People are moving into unhealthy situations when we're forcing them to rehouse too fast. And it's creating some really bad health outcomes. And we need to address that. We want to integrate our goals into the local municipal planning effort. So we definitely want to make a bigger effort of reaching out to Mr. Gunther and to anyone else who might be in charge of long-term planning that can address homelessness. And we also want to collect some more information about felony status as a barrier to housing locally and statewide. Because right now, if you have a felony, even an old one, you cannot get into subsidized housing. And it's really difficult to get into housing in general. So it's proving to be a really difficult barrier. I think the biggest takeaway, honestly, in this short period of time that I would like the commission to understand is that this is a community-wide problem. This isn't just for one nonprofit or the domestic violence shelter to take on. We need to work together to address homelessness. It's not going away. It's bigger than I ever thought it was. And you can read in this slide this is from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. It really is leading to poor health outcomes, higher depression, anxiety, higher rates of suicide, increased utilization of emergency room, lower rates of health insurance. I think that we can read this all and it just makes sense. If you don't have a place to live, how can you concentrate on your own health? So that is everything. I hope I gave you guys a better understanding of what homelessness is looking like right now for us and the efforts that we're undertaking to address it at this time. Is there any questions?
I don't have a question. I just kind of, and I really should have stated this in my report, but the work that Rihanna and Sarah are doing is just, it's imperative. And I've spoken to the commission before about basically producing a line item to support these organizations. The reality is we have serious issues with affordable housing. We currently are facing these mass evictions, and the collateral damage of that is homelessness. And these are the people that are on the forefront of fighting that. And we as a commission, as a county, need to be supporting them. But I think inevitably, and hopefully this is kind of a future item, and I'm going to be, putting together an email this weekend. I really think we need to be looking at a shelter to support transitional, individuals that are in transition, because this is not going away. It's just escalating.
Thank you, Trish.
Any other questions or comments that anyone has for Rihanna?
Rihanna, I think these slides were not in the packet. Could you send a copy to the commission so that we can look them over again?
Absolutely. Yes.
We might want to put this on a future agenda discussion item where, and it might be better to have it as a joint city-county discussion later on because it affects both agencies, both the municipality and the county.
Absolutely.
Really good point. I'll make a note of that here. See if we can work that into some of the regular joint meetings we're hoping to have with the city. And really is very troubling. And I think, Trisha's right when she says that it's, something that will easily escalate. And I can't thank enough all of the organizations and the local homeless council for taking, already working at it so ambitiously.
Thank you. And I hope you guys have a little bit better understanding too of, when Sarah talks about we need to save lives, there's some people who are chronically living outdoors, and then there's other people that it is not safe for them to live where they're living and they have to leave. And if the shelter is full or something like that, like right now there's nowhere to rent. And if there is, it's between $2,000 and $3,000 a month. And we are creating a situation of overcrowding, specifically that I'm seeing, overcrowding and people living in places that are unsafe. We need more places to live for sure, and especially affordable housing. So it's creating a health crisis. Let's try to stop it as best we can.
Absolutely. Thanks for presenting and bringing this to our attention. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Rihanna at this time?
No, Rihanna, just thank you for all that you do on a continual basis. It is much appreciated.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks. Have a great evening. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you.
All right. We'll go ahead and move on to item E, and that's a presentation of deeper results of the Moab audience segmentation survey performed by Love Communication in 2021. And Commissioner Walker has some interesting data to present to us, and I'm definitely looking forward to this. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, thanks, Gabe. And I should mention that Adam Whalen from Love Communications is here, so I encourage you to ask at least one question that stumps me so that Adam can make his attendance here worthwhile. But let me share my screen and get started with it. So you all can see that? Okay. So last year, Love, we contracted, or we worked with Love Communications to do a survey of potential Moab visitors, Moab tourists. And this survey had a lot of questions that touched on a lot of different aspects. Some of that has been presented in a separate workshop, which I think most of you were at, where they tried to segment in the audience just to give, divide potential visitors into different clusters. That's not what I'm talking about now. I just wanted to look at, there's some additional questions that were asked about visitor attitudes that I think are relevant to a lot of the debates and decisions we have to make. But before talking about the results, we should understand who's being surveyed. So these are people living in the Western US, here you can see all the dots. And these are people who have visited at least one national park in the past 5 years. So this is an attempt to get a survey population of potential future visitors. I think maybe a little over 10% of them had actually been to Moab in the past, but these are mostly people who might visit Moab in the future. These slides right here are taken from Love's presentation. And I think it was a pretty high quality survey at 2,600 respondents, which is a nice large number. The effort was made to keep things demographically balanced. So, no survey is perfect, but this one I think is better than average. And so again, here's a copy of the screening questions. You know, they had to ask what state they lived in and had they visited a national park. And if they answered no to either of those, then they weren't accepted for the survey. So I wanted to zero in on just 4 questions that were in the survey. There's other information, so I'm not claiming I'm hitting the most interesting parts, but I think these are things that are worth paying attention to. One is where we ask people about what affects which places they decide to visit or not. There's another question about what they like to do when they get to a destination. There was a question asking about their attitudes about a shuttle system and about a national park reservation system. So here's the first of those 4 questions. Please indicate how much each of the following aspects of your destination impact your likelihood of taking a vacation there. And each of these they rated on a 1 to 7 scale. We asked about a variety of things, but certain things were paired. Like, do you value reasonably priced lodging, or do you care more about high quality lodging? Do you like it to be quiet at night, or are you looking for nightlife opportunities? Do you like the streets to be quiet for walking, or do you like the ability to drive UTVs or RVs around town? And also asked about crowding and variety of shops and restaurants. So here's the average score given to each of those. 1 is the lowest, 7 is the highest. So, I mean, there's no huge surprises here, but people cared about lodging price and it being not too crowded more than anything else. They also cared about lodging quality, so I guess they want to have it both ways. Restaurants are popular, shop variety is popular, and then there's 2 different questions about quietness, and that's what I'm going to focus on for the first half of this. There were the quiet at night got a higher rating than nightlife, and quiet streets got a higher rating than ability to drive UTVs. So this is, and I think we already know that residents like the community to be quiet, but I think the survey is confirming what we probably also already knew anecdotally, is that visitors like it to be quieter too. So when looking at averages like this, one has to be careful. Is it hiding something more interesting under the data? For example, maybe all the men prefer quiet and all the women like the noisier activities. And so no one's really in the middle, even though the average rating's in the middle. So what I'm going to do on the next slide is there's the other survey questions gave lots of different ways of slicing up the audience in terms of how much they spend, how long they like to stay, vaccination status, I mean, all kinds of things. I've only looked at a few of them. There was even like a Myers-Briggs personality test embedded in the survey, but I didn't wade into that. So the next slide, I warn you, has lots of bars and lots of numbers. So if it's not clear what I'm talking about, please interrupt me. And I would say, especially Trish will be my target audience member. So if anyone's going to understand this, so Trish, I beg you to speak up if something's not clear. Okay, so so what are we graphing? So this gap between, we're just zeroing in on these 2 questions about UTVs and quiet streets. And overall, this difference was about 1.5 between the average score for the quiet option versus the average score for the motorized vehicle option. And that's this orange bar here on the far left. The difference between the quiet streets minus the ATV score. So if you look at all 2,600 people, it's a little bit under 1.5. And then each of these color bars represents a different way of dividing up the audience. So for example, these red bars in the middle, this is how this VSPP stands for vacation spend per person. The survey asked them, when you go on vacation, how much do you spend per person in your party? And it ranges from low $0 to $250 to high $2,000 or more. So the main thing to notice is on all of these bars is that none of them are negative. So we've sliced up this survey into I guess 20 or 30 different subgroups, and in all cases, quiet gets a high rating. But it is interesting to know that when we look at the type of visitors that we say we want to attract, that rating gets even higher. So everybody likes quiet, but the visitors that we most want like it even more. So for example, the patient spend per person in these higher spend categories, this quietness rating gets higher. We could look at length of stay, that's these yellow bars here, ranging from 2 days or less to 7 days or more. And again, as you get toward longer and longer stays, preference for quiet increases. We asked about income. There's a similar trend, not quite as sharp. These green bars are vaccination status. A little over 60% of the sample was vaccinated. So of all the groups, the smallest bar is people who said they're not vaccinated, but they're planning on getting vaccinated. And then this one's for not vaccinated and plan to keep it that way. And then there's a pretty small number of people who didn't want to answer. If we look at the light blue is people who've not been to Moab, that's 90% of the survey, or people who have been to Moab. Another way we can look at it, and this will be the last slide on this question, but sometimes averages again hide, they don't give full information about a distribution of responses. So we can just ask how many people in each of these groups rated UTVs higher than quiet versus quiet higher than UTVs. And so the green bars are people who, I'll just as a shorthand say, prefer quiet. The red bars are the ones who prefer UTVs. Yellow is, they rated them the same. And so in all cases, the green bars are much higher than the red bars. Green is 50 to 60%, red is 10 to 15%. Okay, so enough for that. The second question we want to look at is what do people like to do when they get here? And we asked about a lot of different things. I won't read them all. And here are the average responses. So visiting national parks, no surprise, came out highest. Other things rating very highly were eating and dining, hiking, and wildlife viewing. A little bit further down, camping, family-friendly activities, state parks, photography. And then the things that we often associate with Moab, like rock climbing, mountain biking, ATV riding or four-wheeling, scored relatively low. So at first that might seem surprising, but remember, we're polling potential visitors. We're not polling people who come to Moab 3 times a year. And yeah, a lot more people go to Arches than rent a mountain bike or anything else. So it's something we should keep in mind that our typical visitor is probably someone who seems like a rather boring visitor from our point of view. They're not doing exotic activities, they're just doing standard stuff. I won't do the full breakout into subgroups, but we can look at how the tide of these bars changes if we look only at people who say they're big spenders versus small spenders when they go on vacation. And so the red is a small spending category, the green is the bigger spending category. There's a little bit of difference. I think things like national parks rate a little bit higher with the big spenders than I do with the low spenders, but it's not a huge difference. Last 2 questions were, how important is a shuttle system or some other form of public transportation when you visiting a national park destination? And are you in favor of a reservation-based system in order to visit national parks, which have experienced overcrowding as a way to avoid long lines to enter the park? Meaning to say you would need to secure that. So notice that this question is kind of carefully worded. We didn't want to ask people, do you like to be able to go in and have a great time, or jump through some hoops to get a reservation? We were trying to give the rationale here. Shuttles scored a little bit low. Remember, 4 is the middle of the scale. 1 is the lowest they can go. So this orange bar is everybody. It averaged right around 4. And there's not a huge amount of variation in these different groups, except possibly these bars, which are people. This is how another question asks people, do they consider Moab a desirable place to visit? And 1 means not very desirable, 7 means very desirable. So the people who thought they might like to visit Moab seem to be a little bit more positive toward a shuttle. And then finally, the reservation system, it scored a little bit higher, a little below 5 for this orange bar, which is almost everybody. And again, not big variation between these different, each color again represents a different way of slicing up all the survey respondents. But again, we see that people who think positively about Moab, whether they've been here or not, tend to like a shuttle system a little bit more than people who don't like Moab as well. So that is my last slide. So.
Thanks, Kevin.
That's really interesting. Thank you very much. Can you send it to us?
It's in the packet, but I could also send it as a separate document. Oh, but I did want to say, maybe I'll share my screen. I personally think that this kind of data is really interesting. I mean, I think, any of us can, talk to people we've met on the street or, a relative and expresses some opinion about visiting Moab, but it's, surveying 2,600 people is, I think, a much better way of understanding that. And we should understand it. It's kind of the biggest part of our economy is visitors. We can pay for surveys like this with TRT promotion money, meaning we've got a lot of money to do this. So I think later this meeting, August is going to be presenting some ideas for additional surveys, but I think we should consider, doing a variant on this one. Maybe surveying Europeans. Once COVID's over, then we in the past we've said we liked European visitors. So there's lots of variations we could do, or asking questions that bore a little bit deeper into what we're interested in. So we're not making any decisions right now, but I'm hoping that when some potential survey comes on the agenda in the future, that we respond favorably to it.
Hey, Kevin, I do just have one question, and you probably stated it and I just missed it. How, what was the population that was sampled? Was it, can you tell me?
Yeah. Let me,
I'm just wondering, is it reflective of kind of the general population or?
Yeah, so the population that was sampled it was restricted to people who live in the Western US and people who said they have visited a national park within the past 5 years. So the intent was to look at people who travel and sometimes visit national parks. And this is sort of a wide universe of potential future Moab visitors.
Yeah, and Kevin, if I could, this is Adam from Love Communications. It's that third bullet point. One of the things we do with these types of studies is we also control for age and gender distribution, right? So it's one thing to go out there and survey 75% female. And Kevin, fantastic job. I thought that was super great how you broke down the data. But I just wanted to mention the demographic piece, right? Because it's one thing to survey a geographic region, but in these types of studies, we're always accounting for what's called census reflectiveness. So there's a demographic control aspect to it as well.
Yeah, thanks, Adam.
But in theory, somebody who has visited a national park isn't necessarily, I'm just kind of playing the devil's advocate here for a second, isn't necessarily going to encompass some visitors that might be a little bit more, individuals that are using UTVs that are, wanting to access public land trails. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we are kind of parsing out a certain population. Would you disagree? And it's just a statement. It's just,
I think so, but I think only very slightly because, it's just one national park within the last 5 years. We're not looking at people who only visit national parks and that's all they like to do. It's just people
that's a good point.
Consider that as an option. So I do think it's pretty broad.
Okay.
So remind me, this survey wasn't necessarily associated with a specific campaign, or is there a strategy or action that's directly related to this, or is that kind of the next step?
I think it's next step. I'll let Adam talk about that if he's willing to.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few things, and obviously Kevin went through some key questions of interest. Two of the main deliverables that resulted from this study were full kind of audience segmentations and personas, right? So obviously this question's a lot, or this survey was much more robust. I mean, 45 plus questions. So a lot of the takeaways with this, as it pertains to say, marketing as a broad concept or strategy, right, towards visitors is probably the better way to phrase it, was understanding the types of visitors that are coming and what types of messages and things they care about, right? So whether we're talking about those that are staying longer, spending more, what are the types of messages they want to hear? How do we attract those individuals? And then for those individuals who we know are coming that are perhaps not, behaving properly or are not considered a quality visitor, what are ways we can message to them to perhaps, try to improve the quality of their visitor, try to push them to a shoulder season, for example, what types of resources are they using when they plan their trips? So when they arrive, they're not being super loud on the streets to the point about being quiet, right? So there's a lot of aspects of audience understanding that's layered into this survey that kind of permeates at a strategic level throughout all campaigns and initiatives. I'm not trying to say that as a cop-out answer, right? But it's meant to be kind of a blanket understanding of who's coming here, who our audience is, and how do we best communicate with them across all aspects of their kind of planning and arrival and behavior and destination.
Yeah, and I brought up a slide from the presentation Adam and others gave at the workshop, but they came up with these 5 groups, young urban enthusiasts, traveler, et cetera, and just sort of looked at, spending habits and length of stay habits of these different groups, so that if we're trying to attract a type of visitor that's, best for our quality of life and our economy, we know how better to do it. So I think the survey was mainly about coming up with the things that Adam just mentioned in this clustering, but because it had like 40 different questions, there's a lot of additional information in there. And I was focusing on some of the stuff that didn't make the cut for the previous presentation.
Kevin, how do we access the entirety of the survey?
I think there's some documents that I can send that Love sent me, and I can share with you, including like this overview and a few things. And then there's like a giant spreadsheet that's just got the raw data for the answers. And Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's like a PDF of tabulations or anything like that would allow one to easily go through the raw survey results. I had to kind of analyze it myself to produce these graphs.
Yeah, no, I'm not in terms of we have a pseudo PDF in the form of like a PowerPoint slide deck that's every question that was asked and dissected by audience. But I can definitely pass along, and I know I owe it to you, Kevin, just like a full, let's say I believe the full thing is 55 or 60 slides of all the questions in the aggregate. I can pass that along and you guys can access it that way. But there's just a few different kind of executions of the results, to Kevin's point, right? There's the raw data, there's the version that's focused on these audience segments, and then we do have a couple documents that are just basically the survey and the response patterns. So it's whatever specific kind of analysis you would like of the data we can provide.
Yeah, and Adam, just something for you. I know this is kind of a separate discussion, but just a brief bullet point. I think one of the attractions, like you mentioned, of kind of higher spenders staying longer, is kind of spreading that spending out too, so that it's not just expensive hotels and expensive restaurants, but also, renting gear, hiring a shuttle service, hiring a guides, hiring taxis, and so that there's not just these international corporation hotels benefiting from folks being around, but that some of the other industries in town start to get some of that trickle down effect as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I'm glad you brought that up. 2 of our key audiences, and we kind of found 3 key audiences that we considered high quality, right? One of them was just that high spender stays longer, but 2 others are individuals that we found you can map back to one shoulder season travel, right? So that's the dispersion of visitation. And then another, we found a really interesting angle where there's a segment of travelers that can kind of be lumped in with families that travel for hobbies in more of those off seasons. So those would be the individuals visiting places like to rent a mountain bike, for example, right? So, and we did ask questions about this in the survey, right? Specifically, like, when do you travel? What are you doing while you travel? You saw some of that. So in the full audience breakdown, it's not just stressed on who's staying here, spending more, right? It's focusing on the different types of travels to also be inclusive, right? So it's not just literally high earners that are, older and later in life. So there's a lot of really good information on that and some other audiences that I think correlate with everything you just mentioned.
Great.
Also, was there a reason that this was limited to the 11 Western states? Is that just where a line was drawn, or?
Yeah, I can speak to that real quick. So when this survey was executed, there was two kind of reasons for this. The first, it was right as we were rolling out of COVID, was when distribution occurred, right? So we believe that polling at this point, we do know there's a gap in that we didn't hit, for example, the East Coast, but we made a tactical decision in this recruitment. And like with all surveys, there's pluses and minuses to these decisions. Traveler pretty heavily throughout the pandemic. And so when distribution occurred here, we kind of played it safe, knowing that these were individuals that were actively traveling, right? We wanted people that we believe were in an active travel mindset. The other primary reason was cost associated. So in all these types of surveys, every kind of restriction or opening up you do can change the cost parameters on the study. So that was something that was also a consideration that limited it to the Western states.
But I do think it would be, in a future survey, I think we should expand it. I mean, certainly, we're going to be discussing later in this meeting advertising in the Chicago area, for example. We might want to do some surveys that include the Chicago area or just the East Coast, the whole U.S. So I think there's a lot of great information in here, but it also sort of brings to mind a lot of ideas for the information we could get in future surveys.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to use those promotional dollars to gather more of this data so we can, it seems definitely pertinent in informing our policy decisions and protecting and enhancing our economic drivers. So it's good understanding to have. Thanks so much, Adam, for being here for clarification and follow-up. Was there anyone else that had any questions or comments on this item? All right, and thanks so much, Kevin, for putting that presentation together and crunching those numbers for us. So we're gonna move into general business. It's 5:53. I know it's a little earlier than 6, but I'd hate to start what might be a big item next if there's someone on waiting to get on to our 6 p.m. citizens to be heard. So I'm just going to go out of order here real quick and just, I might call for 2 6 o'clock citizens to be heard. But if there's anyone on right now that's wanting to get on at 6 to speak, I'd like to give you that chance now. Is there anyone, any citizens that would like to be heard at this moment? Okay, seeing none, we'll call again, I think, after this next action item. So that'll be actually after 6. So we'll move on to general business action items. And we'll start with item F, and that's approving pre-authorized procurement list from the approved 2022 county budgets. And I'll let Mallory, Nassau Commission Administrator, present.
All right. Can you guys see my screen with the list up?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So as you may recall, back in June, you all approved a new purchasing policy, and something we built into that was giving department heads and elected officials the opportunity to submit items that could be pre-authorized for the chair to sign. And what that means in essence is it's approved once in the budget, and then of course you will approve this list or some of the items. And so when they come through, regardless of the cost, the chair or vice chair can sign without coming to you all for another round of approvals or ratification if needed. So I'll just hit on one key point here, which is regardless of the cost, if it's over $5,000, it has to follow the solicitation process, which could mean informal bids or quotes or competitive sealed bids. It just depends on the price threshold. And also, Chris, as the purchasing agent, can determine that certain things within the threshold that would only require an informal quote, that they still need to go out for bid. So we did this in, I think, August. We sent out the opportunity for folks to sign up. It was the middle of the year, so we picked up a handful, but obviously not everybody had the chance or took us up on it. But I think it went pretty well. I think we got a good result this time around, and I hope that speaks to this process, achieving the goal, which is streamlining things for purchasing, for you all, for just keeping it moving along while keeping public transparency. So with that, I will switch it over to going through the items. And I'm not sure if you all want to go through it one by one, or if we should just jump to anything that stands out that you'd like a further discussion on.
I think maybe if we just wanted to move through department by department alphabetically, I think that would be the cleanest way to go about.
Okay. First up, is the airport.
I was just going to say that I think we all had this in opportunity to review it. So I would also be okay with just if there was questions about specific items, unless you feel like for the sake of the public, we should read through it.
Yeah, maybe not reading through, but maybe if there are any questions with regards to the requests made or the list made by the airport, maybe if there are any questions at this point, maybe not going through line by line. I guess that's what I meant.
Yep. My questions were addressed through the email thread, so I'm good.
Yeah, I read.
And just to recall that email thread, so it looks like so far as we know, we're using grants as much as possible for the airport expenses. I think that's summarizes them.
Okay, so that helps clarify my question. My comment was like something like terminal construction modifications for baggage screening. Yeah, this isn't just an agreement that the county will pay for it. There's an assumption that they're going to search for funding.
Yes, and I think Andy's on, but my understanding with that one in particular is that it's a that's coming down through the and so it could be grant eligible, but it has to be sorted out, as all of the TAN ones are. Andy, do you have anything you want to add, or?
I'd be happy to add. Can you hear me?
Yes,
we can.
Very good. Okay. The baggage screening project is a result of TSA finally obtaining a baggage screening machine. In the past, they have done every single bag by hand. So we're glad that TSA has the baggage screening machine, but with that creates some space issues. And the location where we need to do it will require construction within the terminal building. We don't know how much that will cost. This kind of construction is not eligible for any grant funding. So when I budgeted, I put a relatively high figure because I didn't know what it would all entail. I think through the drawings that we've done, we've done a very efficient job of what walls will need to be added or moved or what have you. But the next step that I need to do is go through a request for qualifications for an architect and then a contractor before I have an actual estimate of what it will cost. But that is something that will need to be paid for through the budget.
thank you for that clarification.
And that was all these were already included in the 2022 budget, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So really, the process that we're going through right now is just to kind of say, the things on this list don't need to come back to this board for this body for final approval. That between the purchasing agent and the department heads, we're kind of giving them the green light to work through the process of on the things on this list.
Yeah, I can speak to that, which is another one thing to be aware of is everything on this list that y'all will approve is that it has to be within the budget at the time of approval. So if anything changes, it's fine, but it has to be approved. And so that's also where Chris, as the purchasing agent, will be a part of signing off on that. And goodness, I had one other thing that's escaping me. Oh, that's it. So the department head can only approve if it's under 5,000, but regardless of the price, if it's under 5,000 or up to 500, million, the chair or vice chair have to sign any binding agreement. So these all go through quite a process.
Right. I guess my point was more that this body already approved this in a certain degree, approved these purchases, not necessarily with an amount, but that the doggy pet relief area was on the budget that we already approved. So this is just a matter of what hoops we jump through to get that.
Yep, that's correct.
So there's no new purchases on this list is my point. And so.
No, yeah, you're right, Evan. There shouldn't be. This list is only for purchases that are already budgeted. And so this is essentially the list of things that are not contentious or still up in the air or whatever. And it will help department heads be able to get through these purchases without having to sit through meetings. In the past we've put these things on agendas, and then a department head will have to sit for 2 or 3 hours waiting for their agenda item to come up, and then it just gets rubber stamped, and so that's like 2 or 3 hours of their life in the evening that they could have got back. So that's the whole point of this, just make it more efficient. If there's anything that you're not sure about, we can take it off and then just bring it to you when it comes time to do it. So yeah, this is the non-contentious stuff that we all feel comfortable with, and so that's the point of it, just to be more efficient. And and to take the action to formally authorize the chair's signature on any agreements or any other purchase orders or whatever may go with the purchase.
I think it's a great move, and I'm really appreciative of the efforts and efficiency here and streamlining these meetings. And so with that in mind, I would go ahead and make a motion to approve the 2022 chair pre-authorization capital procurement list contingent upon all purchases being within budget at the time of the chair approval.
Second.
Thanks, Commissioner Clapper. Second by Commissioner McGann. Any further discussion? Are there any items on this list that any commissioner feels like they'd like to perhaps have some discussion about taking off of it for later review?
Yes, I would. I'd like to talk about some of the. So the whole idea with some of these things coming through commissioner review is that we have some oversight to make sure the program is running in the way that we think it should be run. So I do have concerns over having I don't know, maybe we could just talk about this. So like the Northern Utah Fly marketing campaign, maybe I'd like a little bit more information about that and insurance that wasn't going to include any specific marketing for UTV activities.
I'm okay with amending the motion to remove that item from the list.
Second.
Let's see, do we have the economic? Okay, let's see, we got a motion.
I just wanted to say a little bit about that.
Well,
I think
did we get a second on the motion, right?
Yeah, no,
Yes.
we had a
Right.
second on the motion.
Okay.
So,
And I
yeah,
seconded the amendment.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure we were in a motion. So go ahead, Kevin. Discussion.
I do think it's one thing to approve the spend, and that's not the same thing as approving the content of the spend. And I've talked with August about this, and he might have something to say, but my expectation is that in the future, we're going to have a policy where basically ads and messaging have to, get a stamp of approval from the commission. And that would certainly apply to this. So I think in approving this, I don't think the money will be spent until we're also happy with the content of it. At least that's my understanding of the direction we're heading.
I can appreciate that. At the same time, I've seen his predecessor put a lot of work into campaigns that then at the 11th hour were not funded by this body and kind of had the rug pulled out from under them after they had put a lot of effort into it. And so if it is one that we want to kind of put under the microscope, let's go ahead and get that out in the open now. And that one can run through the it's not that we're nixing the program, it's that it would just kind of need our involvement along the way.
Right, until we have that policy in place.
Yeah.
Another thing under economic development,
But
I just thought.
So there's a motion on the table to pull that one item, right?
Right.
I think
Maybe before,
we move on.
I might have made the motion prematurely. Let's finish the economic development department, and then we can see.
That's what I would prefer. Let's. I don't know if we have to officially rescind the amended motion.
I think,
but as chair, I'd prefer that we stick to our original motion and continue discussion at this point, or at least for this department before we go about amending that original motion. Sorry,
well,
go ahead.
Then maybe to keep it clean from the Robert's Rules point of view, maybe we could just vote down the amendment. It could be something similar could be offered at the end. I mean, I don't think we should just kind of have a discussion and pretend that the amendment was never made.
Wait, the amendment never got seconded. Is that what Chris was asking? The original motion was seconded, but the amendment, the amended motion, did that get seconded?
Yes, I seconded it.
Wait, you seconded the original motion, but did you second the amended motion?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
How about
how about I call for a vote on the amendments to the original motion? Is that what we're wanting right now? I need a little bit of help
what
here.
if we continued the discussion because we didn't hear what Sarah was going to say, and maybe the motion is clean enough as it is.
Yep, maybe it is. I'll carry on. Okay, I have a whole list, you guys, but I thought that under the economic development department that the request for $500,000 for the local business expansion program, it just seemed like $500,000 was a big item. I have the same concern about the bike path, but I don't know, but maybe August could just talk about that a little bit, and maybe it's totally fine to have on this pre-authorized spending list.
I'd like to invite August to offer comments, both on the ad spend item that was previously discussed and perhaps the, putting a $500,000 item on this capital procurement list.
Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, and thanks for all of the shining, glowing remarks earlier from Gabe, Mary, and Mallory. So now I feel like well prepared to take on some critical questions. So I guess just to bring some light to the flying marketing campaign first. So that was an application that Elaine put together, got approved, and so the match money is actually approved already as of an August meeting. But I don't think we've approved the expenditure of the entire package or of the grant money. And, again, that's through the state program where we apply for funding. We've been approved for that funding. And I'm more than happy to have a conversation about what that should look like if, as applied for, the commission feels uncomfortable with it. I can ask the state if we can amend it. I think those kinds of things are on the table. But I think that would obviously take into account the responsible recreation and education messaging. And I think it's a fair enough conversation to be had at a later date. And I'd be happy to do that. And then on the diversification and grant program, that's kind of the biggest tool that we're using in the diversification programming. We are still developing the exact kind of program parameters, but the focus is targeting local businesses that are already kind of diversified and helping expand them as kind of the first step of kind of a diversification strategy, rather than attraction or trying to build a business park or something of that nature. But agreed. Maybe when the program happens, the commission has to approve the individual grantees, the individual grant relationships. We're thinking of a handful of bigger grant amounts, having it tiered where there's a handful of, maybe one or two in that $50,000 to $100,000 amount, and more in the $20,000 amount, and plenty in kind of that $5,000 amount. Different levels of rigorous when it comes to application times and how much information we're asking of people. So in terms of the actual individual dispersal of funding, it might end up being smaller grant agreements that still need to be approved by this body. I kind of just put everything on here that was discrete and kind of was a single package for conversation. And so, again, if we want to remove that and talk about that at another time, I'm comfortable with that as well.
Are there any further
other
questions for? Yep. Mm-hmm.
So this is Chris. I actually think we should probably pull that diversification grant program off this list. It's just a little too vague. I think this list is for expenditures that we know are very concrete. We understand what they are. So this program still has a long way to go before we really nail down exactly, what kind of assistance we're going to provide and to whom. But this is for diversified economic development, not tourism related. And also just, to be clear with regard to what Sarah brought up, we never advertise UTV activities. And all the advertising that we are going to do is going to be compliant with our advertising policy, which at this point, is still fairly robust. And I believe you're all interested in improving it further. But all advertising has to be educational or responsible recreation message based, period, across the board. There's no exceptions to that. And so, but it's no big deal to pull any of these things that you're, not entirely comfortable with. It just means they'll, have to get on an agenda to be approved. So yeah, as Gabe indicated, maybe we should go through and mark the ones that folks are not comfortable with, and then we can amend the amended motion to include the rest of them.
Anyone else with other items to flag on economic development or otherwise?
Mallory, could you scroll? I'm realizing that this version of the ED list is different from the one in the packet that I reviewed. So if you could just scroll down to the bottom of the ED stuff to see if there's anything else that I was, okay, great. I also want to say I certainly agree with what Chris said about the diversification grant program. I do think if we're going to check off on something, we need to know in more detail what it is. And so it seems premature for that item.
I just had a question. Maybe Bill Jackson is still on to answer. For the $500,000, $500,000 to pave the path north of town, or to pave the path. I was wondering if that's the shared use path that goes north out of town, or whether it was part of the Spanish Valley Drive project. And then
No, that one's for the already built one, the North Moab Recreation Area path from, I guess, the pedestrian bridge to 313.
Correct.
And so how often does that have to happen? And also, I don't know, the path doesn't seem that bad to me right now, but.
The best practices is every, 7 years, and we were behind probably behind close to 4 years when we first started doing it, so my thoughts were is to get approximately 8.5 miles done from 313 to right around the River Bridge area there, like Chris had mentioned. And I plugged that 500,000 in there. To me, it's kind of a placeholder because of the oil prices and labor costs is so volatile. You don't even know really what it's going to be. I don't suspect it's going to be that much, but I don't know that either until I see bids.
Okay, thanks. I don't think I want to pull that one off. I wanted some clarification on it.
Actually, when I said bids, we'll get quotes because it'll be through the state purchasing agreements.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for staying on and offering that explanation there. Anyone else have any items to flag? All right. So I wanted to be clear on the amendments to the motion. And that was particularly to remove the Northern Utah Fly-In marketing campaign, but not necessarily for the diversification grant program.
We could have a separate amendment to do that after we vote on the northern one. So just
okay. So there was a motion on the floor by Commissioner Clapper and a second by Commissioner McGann to amend the original motion to and also exclude the Northern Utah Fly-In marketing campaign cost $300,000 from this procurement list. So I'll go ahead and call for a vote on that. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. It's hard for me to do this with the screen share on. So I might just quick do a roll call. Commissioner Clapper?
Aye.
Commissioner Hadler?
Yes.
Oh, there they are. All right, I'll just do this. I guess I'll continue doing it this way. Commissioner Stock?
Aye.
Commissioner Walker? Commissioner McGann?
I abstain.
Commissioner McGann?
She looks frozen.
Yeah, she might be frozen. Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, there's,
yes.
yes, that's a yes. And Commissioner Hadeen?
Yes.
Commissioner Wojtek votes no. So the amendment to the motion passes 5-1 with one abstaining, with Commissioner Walker abstaining. And so that brings us back, or do we want to, I would entertain an additional amendment.
Yeah, so I'll move to remove the $500,000. I don't have it in front of me, the exact name, but the grant program for economic diversification. Is that from the
Yep.
from the pre-approved procurement list.
I'll second
Do you have
that.
a second?
Yeah.
All right,
I'll
we have a
second that.
motion
Briefly-
by,
Okay, so go ahead. I just had something to say after.
oh, sorry. Motion by Commissioner Walker, second by Commissioner Dean. Discussion?
And I just want to say, I don't, it's not like I disapprove of the program or think it's sketchy and it needs like super close oversight. I just think I'm not sure exactly what it is. So I would very much look forward to, in a future meeting, hearing more details on this.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion? All right, that was a motion by Commissioner Walker, second by Commissioner Dean. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Looks like that passes unanimously. Mary, I just want to make sure I get your vote because I don't see you or hear you.
You don't see me? You're not seeing me?
Your
No.
video is frozen, Mary. Maybe if you turned it off and back on would help.
Oh, okay. My videos, because it's not frozen on my side, so I didn't know. Yes.
Thank you. So that vote does pass unanimously. So I suppose at this point I would entertain a motion to approve the updated procurement list based on the amendments.
So we've already had that motion. We just have to vote on it. No.
Got it. Yeah, you're right. So that was a motion made by Commissioner Clapper and seconded by Commissioner McGann.
And it's been amended twice. And so we're voting now on the main motion as amended.
I'm voting on the main motion as amended. Thank you. Is there any discussion at this time before we go on and vote?
I'm glad that my effort to get an early motion for efficiency has paid off.
I got to take notes about this. I'm learning, and I got to make sure. I'm going to look at my Robert's Rules book after this and make sure this was done. See how many rules we broke. Thank you all so much for helping. And so I'll go ahead and call for, again, that was a motion by Clapper, second by McGann. I'll call for a vote. All those voting in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Vote passes
Aye.
unanimously.
Am I
Thank
still
you, Mary.
froze?
Yep.
No,
You're
we can
back.
see you now. We see you
Back.
moving.
Okay.
All
Thank
right. It is 6:23. I tried to get a sneak in the citizens to be heard before 6, but if there is anyone who's any members of the public that are wishing to participate in citizens to be heard, we have our 6 o'clock session that's happening at 6:23 now. If there's anyone out there that wishes to speak at this time, please state your name and offer us a comment if you didn't do so at 4. I know I saw Catherine Holyoke had jumped on for a second, and unfortunately, I don't know if she was able to stick on. I do apologize, but we did receive that written comment, and as always, comments are accepted at commission@grandcountyutah.net. So here we go. Where are we here in the agenda? Looks like we're moving on to item G. Approving updated Family Support Center Director job description. Christina Sloan, County Attorney, and Renee Baker, Personnel Services Director.
Renee drafted the docs mostly. So Renee, why don't you take it away and I'll add as needed.
Perfect. So for the Family Support Director position, it is budgeted in on our position pay plan for 2022. We have a current director who's announced that they will be retiring sometime within the year. So we were just hoping to get an update of the job description. And what I didn't put in my agenda summary, but what I wanted to point out is kind of the biggest change of the job description. We are one of 2 family support centers who operate under the county's kind of operations there. Most of them are independent nonprofit organizations. So added into this job description for whoever may be a new director coming in, just with county support, of course, just transitioning the Family Support Center in the future to that independent nonprofit organization. It opens them up for some better opportunities as well as opens up the county. So other than that, just some minor changes within the job description.
And I'll just add for our new commissioners that might not know, the Family Support Center provides crisis care, so emergency care for children and families. It was started in the early 2000s by Happy Morgan, who just saw the need. And even then,
It was binge.
oh, okay.
Bill Binge.
I was told it was Happy Morgan. Okay, but way back it was started and then wrapped into the county because the need was there. But as Renee pointed out, there are only 2 in the state that are within the county infrastructure. Chris can correct me, but the funding continues to dwindle away for this type of crisis care by the state. So I do think the county currently is providing about $65,000 or so towards the Family Support Center budget. And that is an extremely lean budget as it is. Sherilyn, our current director, is an absolute angel. I am very concerned that we won't be able to find a replacement at this pay grade, but we're not asking you to change that for now. We'll just see who is out there. But we do hope that within the year, with the county support, we would spin the Family Support Center out into its own nonprofit organization. It's doing very important work, but I also think it could do a lot more than it is now if it, was a true 501c3 nonprofit supported by a board and doing and seeking a lot of its own, not just grant funding, but also private funding in the community, could really be grown into a community net. We have Mallory and Renee and I, we've all spent a lot of time actually trying to find an umbrella organization that's already out there that would be willing to take on the Family Support Center within its established infrastructure. And that includes RUCD, which is Rural Utah Child Care Development, and also the local child care group. Unfortunately, both of those organizations their missions are quite different. Their missions are sort of day-to-day support and childcare. This is crisis care and it's emergency support and quite a different thing. So just so you know, we have done a lot of work to try to fit Family Support Center within an existing nonprofit, but it hasn't worked out so far. But I have great hope and confidence that we'll be successful in helping support them, but also push them out of the nest. This updated job description does say, with county support, the director will be responsible for transitioning the Family Support Center to an independent 501c3. What that support looks like, we determine, later. So we're not determining that now. I sort of have, just so you know, for a future discussion wrapped around in my head, sort of maybe like 3 years of financial support at the same level that we're creating now, are providing now, but that's a future discussion. All we need to do, and the reason this job description is before you is that the handbook does say pretty significant changes in the job description. You guys need to review them. And this 501c3 concept is quite significant.
And this is the same grade that it was at when we approved the budget.
Correct.
With that in mind, I would move to approve the updated Family Support Director job description effective 1/18/22.
Second.
Thank you, Evan. Seconded by Mary. Any discussion on this item?
Just to the description itself, could you just highlight the couple big changes here that made it necessary to come to this board?
It's really the only change that made it necessary to come to you is that 501c3 spinoff. We did include a little bit more specificity about what the job or the director is already doing, but none of that I consider significant.
Copy that.
Further discussion? All right. Thank you, Christina. So I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Clapper, seconded by Commissioner McGann. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Vote passes unanimously. Moving on to item H. approving the elimination of one existing Grand County Attorney's Office prosecutorial assistant position, the addition of one Grand County Attorney's Office paralegal 1 position, and the amendment of the Grand County Attorney's Office pay plan in relevant parts to update the approved positions. Christina Sloan.
Thank you. That's a mouthful. So if you'll recall, we did approve, we have 3 open positions in my office that were approved during the budgeting process. 2 of those are prosecutorial assistants, which require 0 years of experience. And one of those is a deputy county attorney prosecutor. Now that we have increased the pay, the recruitment for those positions is going much better, and I appreciate your help there and your support. We got an outstanding candidate who applied for a prosecutorial assistant position. She has 18 years of experience. She's already served as a prosecutorial assistant in Colorado for many years. She also has served as a victim assistant within on the process side, not the advocacy side, which is obviously what prosecution is doing. So that's extremely important and relevant experience for my office. And then she also has experience in mental health treatment from years ago in Colorado as well. So she has 18 years of extremely relevant, that's 18 years of experience in the criminal justice system. And so I'm asking to eliminate one of my prosecutorial assistant positions and create a paralegal 1 position for her based on her experience. The fiscal impact is very low. It's less than $300. And that's because the 2 positions have different qualifications. So I'm eliminating more than 6 years of her total experience that we can count towards the prosecutorial assistant from counting towards the paralegal 1 because of the way the requirements are set up in the job descriptions. So the pay is actually quite similar. So the $680.94, which is the fiscal impact, includes both her wages and her benefits. What's an important piece of this, though, is not just acknowledging her experience and providing the associated appropriate title of paralegal 1, but it also sets her on the path to promotion within the office. I have created a paralegal 1, 2, and 3 structure in the office here, like there is in the sheriff's office and like you see in some other offices. Paralegal 2 requires many years of experience. So I'm not going to be coming back to you in 6 months or even next year asking to promote this woman just because she has all this great experience, because the way it's set up is that you have to move through this office with that experience, but at least sets her on the appropriate track to be promoted appropriately. I think that's all I have to offer, but let me know if you have any questions, and Renee is still here in case you have any questions for her. Oh, and in terms of the actual budget impact, there won't be one because her first day is anticipated to be February 1. So already we've missed a whole month for this 1 position. Our second prosecutorial assistant is unfilled. We do have a couple of interviews set up in about 2 weeks. We're so busy and we're at 50% staffing, we're having trouble even scheduling interviews, quite frankly. And then our prosecutorial position, quite frankly, will probably stay open for a bit. We want to make sure we find the right person. We do have a law clerk who's providing great value to us, so we don't have to rush in to hiring the prosecutor. And we're actually looking for someone who's fresh, who's 0 to 3 years of experience. We've actually gotten a number of prosecutor applicants who have 10 to 15 years of experience. We don't need that, the prosecutorial positions for our justice court. So anyway, there'll be no budget impact of this change this year, but the total fiscal impact is $680. Renee, do you want to add anything?
I think you touched on everything, Christina.
I'll make a motion. I move to approve the elimination of the existing GCAO prosecutor assistant position, the addition of one GCAO paralegal 1 position, and the amendment of the Grand County Attorney Office pay plan in relevant part to update the approved position.
And just to
Thank you, Mary.
clarify, well, just to clarify, it's elimination of 1 existing prosecutorial assistant because the other one will remain open.
Didn't I say that?
I think you said and it was a mouthful, so I just wanted to make sure Quinn understood.
Great. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Walker. Discussion. Any questions for Christina or Renee on this item?
I've got a question. I'm not sure if it's for Renee but if we're not changing the job description, then why does the pay plan need updating?
Because, and that's why we brought this to the commission, because we are proposing a grade change for a position. So even though we're not changing an actual job description of an existing position, we are changing the grade of the position. That was
Because
budgeted.
the pastoral assistants at grade 7, paralegal 1 is at grade 9, and those are established grades for job descriptions that already exist. And then the reason why the fiscal impact is negligible is because the credit for prior experience on our step scale is different. So she gets fewer steps at the paralegal 1 than pastoral assistant because of the way the experience is credited based on the qualifications required for the positions.
Any additional questions this time? Yeah, well, I would just say that I'm excited that excited to hear that you found this candidate. Seems like a really common sense move to put that person on a track to use their experience to continue and reward them as a county employee, and can't argue with that minimal fiscal impact overall. So with that said, we had a motion on the floor by Commissioner McGann, seconded by Commissioner Walker. I'll call for a vote. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Vote passes unanimously. Sorry, Evan.
I still didn't wrap my mind around it, but if it's already passed, it's a moot point. So you can just mark me as abstaining. Thanks.
Okay, so vote passes 6-0 with Commissioner Clapper abstaining. Sorry about that if I didn't give enough time for discussion.
That's perfect. Thank you.
All right, moving on to item I, adopting resolution titled amending resolution 3273 and adopting COVID-19 sick leave policy during the 2022 pandemic period. Renee Baker, Personnel Services Director.
Sure. So I will rewind and just give a quick history about the COVID sick leave policy. In 2020, the federal government came out and stated that under the CARES Act funding and some other things that we had to provide COVID sick paid leave to all employees who were eligible through the end of 2020. In 2021, we've decided to extend that policy, and the county would be picking that up. We were able to pick up some of the CARES funding. We can use it, kind of bank it for that CARES Act funding, though we did use most of this spending in 2020. So we have just some extra expenses there. But we are just proposing for 2022 to extend the policy. The county picks that up. This allows employees to stay home when they feel sick and not have to come in. They can go get their COVID vaccine or their boosters and use that time to recover, as well as showing any symptoms and things like that. They are just staying out of the workplace. And if they're unable to work remotely, they have a leave that's not depleting their balance. So you'll notice in the resolution, there's no real change to the actual policy, just an extension beginning January 1st, 2022 through the end of this year, December 31st, 2022.
Thank you, Renee. Were there any questions or clarifications that anyone wanted to ask of Renee at this moment? I'd also entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move to adopt the resolution titled amending resolution 3273 and adopting COVID-19 sick leave policy during the 2022 pandemic period.
Thank you, Kevin. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jacques. Any discussion on this item? Okay. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for a vote. We had a motion by Commissioner Walker, seconded by Commissioner Hadler. I'll call for a vote. All those voting in favor, raise your hand or say aye. That vote passes unanimously. Moving on to item J, approving application to the Bureau of Land Management to renew further rights of way expiring in 2022. Bill, you still with us?
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you. Tell us about this
Sure.
this item here.
Yeah, I just kind of do a little rundown, then I'm gonna have Glenn Arthur, Assistant Road Supervisor. He put all these applications together and then worked with Frank with the mapping. And so you should have it all in your packet. And I'll hang out and answer any questions you need to. But as you recall, last meeting, we did approve the renewal of County Road 261 and 226, and now we're working on these others. I assume you have it in your packet, the list there. And long story short, those that say Access Road, Danish Flat, and Cisco Oil Field, they're all in the same vicinity. As a matter of fact, I noticed on John's presentation on page 175, he's got a map there that's titled Solid and Fluid Mineral Resources in dark orange. That's exactly where these roads are. It's off exit 214 off I-70 in Danish Flat, Cisco area. Cisco Springs is what it's called. And these roads service those gas wells. And, you know, there's recreation out there as well as grazing and things of that nature. And then, of course, the Mary Jane Canyon Road, that's we all know is off 128 and Professor Valley. So I'll just hand it over to Glenn.
Okay, well, I filled all these applications out. Like Bill said, they're all due by the end of the year, and we figured that it would be easier to bundle them together so that we could get this done and not have to come back a half a dozen times to meet with you folks to get these taken care of. So Bill pretty much explained to you the areas that these are in. Maps were included. Thanks to Frank in the GIS office, he did the mapping for me. So if you have any questions, I'll be willing to answer them.
Sorry, Glenn, I failed to introduce you. Thanks so much for being here with us tonight.
You bet.
Does anyone have any questions for Glenn or Bill?
I think Bill already said this, but just to confirm, one, these are all County B roads, correct?
Yes. County.
And with the exception of the Mary Jane Canyon Road, they're all in the vicinity of Danish Flat, maybe a little bit to the west of there.
Yes, that is correct.
I just have a question, like, what happens if we didn't renew our right of way?
Well,
Does maintenance just cease or something?
yeah, we have to go with the state and get them to agree to get rid of the right of way because they own part of the right of way on the BLM land. So we have to work with the state to get that taken off. But all these roads are pretty well, used by, there's gas and oil pipelines out there and access to well sites and, even hunting out there. So they're quite well used.
And is there any expense associated with the right of way? Are we paying the BLM anything, or is
there's no charge for the right of ways?
Okay, thanks.
Excuse me, I didn't understand. What did you say, Glenn?
there is no charge for the right of ways. We don't pay any fees for the right of ways on BLM right of ways.
I mean, I would add that, and Bill already touched upon this, but there is quite a bit of hunting out there. And then, you know, both wool growers, there's a lot of sheep grazers out in that country. So a lot of people running sheep and some cattle. So they're used for a lot of purposes.
Any other questions for the roads department? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Be happy to make that motion, Gabe.
Thank you.
I would move to authorize the Grand County Road Department to submit an application to the BLM to renew Grand County's rights of way on road numbers 98, 258, and 354, number 266, 267, 268, and 270.
Thank you, Jacques. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Gabe.
Thank you. And any further discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for a vote. We had a motion by Commissioner Hadler and a second by Commissioner Hedin. All those voting in favor, raise your hand or say aye. And I wanted to make sure I got, thank you. I wanted to make sure I got Evan's vote there because you're not on my screen anymore. Did I get an aye from you, Evan?
Yes, I was unmuting.
Thank you. All right, the vote passes unanimously. Thanks, Glenn and Bill.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
All right, moving on to item K, approving volunteer reappointments to the airport board. Commissioner McGann.
Yes, we had 4 applicants to begin with. One of them withdrew and the other person wasn't to begin with. They submitted their application after the board meeting and it had already been voted on. So, and Bill Groff and Jody Patterson are very involved and very engaged. They're good board members. They're the type of board members you want. They come prepared. They have questions. So I'll make a motion. I move to approve the reappointment of Bill Groff and Jody Patterson to serve on the airport board with terms beginning 1/1/2022 and expiring 12/31/2025.
Thank you, Mary. Do I have a second? Seconded by Evan. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those voting in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Vote passes unanimously. Moving on to item L, approving volunteer reappointment to the Public Health Board.
I didn't see those. I didn't have those in my packet. Did anybody?
Those came, oh, I'm sorry, what was that? The applications?
Well, I didn't even see it when I looked for them earlier. I didn't see them. It went right to consent agendas right after airport board. I didn't see
Mary,
anything.
I think Tara had to add that in later today or later this afternoon. She added
Oh,
it.
so I probably downloaded my packet too soon? Okay.
Yes,
I did. Okay.
Yeah, and that
Thank
was
you.
partly on me getting this in kind of last minute. So thanks for covering for me, Mallory and Tara. Just the Public Health Board, that's for the Southeastern Utah Health Department. As it says, met in an open meeting. If you weren't somehow already convinced that Rihanna Medina wasn't a tremendous asset to this community, hey, look, she's on another board doing amazing things for people in our community. So needless to say, she's an excellent candidate and a valuable member of that board. There was only one vacancy. She was the only applicant, and that board unanimously forwarded her recommendation. So I'd entertain a motion. Yes, Commissioner Clapper.
I thought we already had a motion, but I was so eager to vote. But I would move to approve the reappointment of Brianna Medina to serve on the Public Health Board with term beginning January 1st, 2022 and expiring December 31st, 2024.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Seconded by Hadler. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we had a motion by Commissioner Clapper, a second by Commissioner Hadler. I'll call for a vote. All those voting in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Yes.
Mary, was that? Oh, yeah, there you go. Vote passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item N, approving annual subscription and membership renewals. Chris Baird, Strategic Development Director.
Thanks, Gabe. So there's not a lot of subscriptions that you have. The main one I think that's been in contention in the past is UAC, and so that's the main invoice in there. But we also are members of the Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments and the National Association of Counties, as well as members of the Moab Area Chamber of Commerce. So those are the main ones. And I think that I'd be, looking for a motion to approve moving forward with those if you're all in agreement. Most of the other subscriptions I think we've dropped off, and they were newsletter subscriptions that nobody read. But it's been a few years since we've had those. So if everyone's in agreement of the Chamber of Commerce, UAC, the ALG, and NACO, then you can take a motion for that.
Is our NACO, is that tens of thousands of dollars or is that hundreds of dollars or?
No, NACO is hundreds of dollars. The main thing that we get out of NACO is their continued lobbying for rural counties to get the full federal payment in lieu of taxes appropriation. And so, they did actually come and visit us also. And it might be the first time that I've seen NACO staff in Grand County for a long time, but last year they came and visited. And so, yeah, I think that it's important to have somebody lobbying on behalf of that federal payment in lieu of taxes, because it's always kind of hanging in the balance every year.
Yeah, I would agree on that. And there might be some unforeseen issues that come up. I know that commissioners have attended their conference in the past and had found value in that networking and kind of a broader sense than what we might just find in Utah. And in regards to the UAC, I know that although we've had some heartache with the board, that there's other departments in the county that get a lot of value out of those relationships and actually serve as leaders in UAC. And so with that in mind, I think that they've expressed efforts to repair some of our relationships, and I'm willing to keep that going. And so I would make a motion to renew our memberships as outlined.
Second.
Thanks, Evan. Thanks, Mary. Discussion.
Chris, could you just list the things we're renewing again, just so we're clear what we're voting on?
The Utah Association of Counties, Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments, National Association of Counties, and the Moab Area Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you.
I'll just make a comment. I don't really have the institutional knowledge. I've only been here for a year to understand the relationship with UAC, but I will trust Evan and Mary and their support of this approval to move forward.
Yes, they're extremely helpful to our department heads. I know Quinn has gotten a lot out of it. Chris Kaufman. I think they're more helpful for our department heads and people like that than they are for the commission because we're such an outlier. You know, they
But
will help. Oftentimes we don't fall in line with the rest of the rural counties.
I think that's true, but it's also, we discussed it at pretty great length a year ago, the UAC membership, and then decided to stay with them. And I think the reviews from people who were working closely with them during the lobbying the state capital were generally good. So my guess is whatever reasons we had to renew with UAC a year ago, we've got stronger reasons now. So, you know, based on.
Yeah. And I would add to, if we're in a position where we don't have currently have a lobbyist working on our behalf, their framework and tools for keeping up with the legislature are pretty effective and convenient for us. So it's providing us some real value there. Evan, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that, I think that a lot of their responsiveness towards us and our concerns was our open and honest consideration of whether or not to renew the membership. And so I think that to Tricia's point, it is worth discussing. And just to kind of lift the curtain a little bit on the institutional knowledge, is some of the bigger counties, they allow a more a la carte sort of approach. There have been some issues with public land stances that some of the larger urban counties didn't agree with, and they were able to just kind of pay for those sort of support services for attorneys and treasurers, et cetera, without paying into some of the legislative efforts. And so I don't think we're to that point yet. And I think that Gabe's correct that without our own lobbyists, this makes a lot of sense to participate with these guys. But just, this comes up annually. So it's worth remembering our interactions with UAC throughout the year. And hopefully it continues to improve because they are a strong relationship and a strong voice up north. So it's nice when we can all get along.
Sarah or Jacques, did you have anything to add in this discussion? No? All right, any other further discussion from any other commissioners? All right, we had a motion on the floor by Commissioner Clapper, a second by Commissioner McGann. I'll call for a vote. All those voting in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Vote passes unanimously. Moving on to the consent agenda. Item N, ratifying chair's signature on a contract with prosecutor by Carpel for software for the county attorney's office approved in the 2022 county budget. Item O, approving independent contractor agreement with Zunich Brothers Mechanical for toilet cleaning and pumping services at Sand Flats Recreation Area at a cost of $60,138, which is included in the 2022 budget. Item P, ratifying the chair's signature on a letter to the San Juan County Planning Commission regarding proposed campground in Mill Creek Canyon. Item Q, approving the purchase of a maintenance UTV for Old Spanish Trail Arena. Item R, approving commissioner liaison modification for county boards. Is there any discussion to be had, or I would entertain a motion actually first before discussion?
I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Thank you, Mary. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Gabe.
Seconded by Jacques. Any discussion or conversation here on these items? All right. We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner McGann, a second by Commissioner Hadler. I'll call for a vote. All those voting in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Vote passes unanimously. All right, here's the moment we always are heavily awaiting. Mallory Nassau with calendar items and special events.
Thank you. I know it's awful to say, but I look forward to the day this doesn't come to me. But a few quick things. We do have the land use code training tomorrow. Sarah asked a question earlier about the morning and afternoon sessions, and there are 2 different Zoom links. So I know I sent that morning one to Sarah. If anybody else wants that, please let me know. It's for 8:30 in the morning. And then the other one is at 1 p.m. Let's see, February 21st will be closed to observe President's Day. I think I've mentioned this a few times, but we have January 29th, the Arches Ultra, the Red Hot Marathon, February 19th. And then there's a few things at OSTA that are pretty small, athletic things. And then we're starting to get into the bigger ones that we see every year, as well as new ones. So there should be more excitement to come in February. And I believe that's all that I have, unless there's any questions.
Seems pretty straightforward to me.
I would make a motion to go into closed session to discuss purchase, exchange, lease, or sale of real property. The time is 7:02.
Thanks, Mary. Could I have a second? Second by Evan. All right, motion by Commissioner McGann, second by Commissioner Clapper. All those voting in favor to go into closed session, raise your hand or say aye. Passes unanimously. All right, I guess Mallory, let us know when we're ready to roll here. Did I get all the details out there, appropriate details out there? We got Mary quoted the time. That was great. Thank you. Is that good enough?